Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. Today you are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show, and of course I am guest hosting for the day. My name is Brett Segal, otherwise known as the Disgruntled Millennial, but you could refer to me as Mr. the Disgruntled Millennial. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. Now, if it sounds like I sound a little bit messed up today, that is because I do. I feel like a bag of male sexual extremities has slapped me across the face several times, and I sound a little bit like it too. Today is October 20th. It's a very, very special day for me. It is the day that my father was born. October 20th, 1952. My deceased father was born October 20th, 1952. How did he die, you might ask? Well, he died from hemophilia-related AIDS. Yes, that means he was one of the very few straight men in the 80s who managed to contract AIDS. And, of course, AIDS is a human disease, but let's not fool ourselves into thinking that AIDS doesn't affect the homosexual community more than it does the straight community, and to simply label it as a human disease is a little bit of an oversimplification, especially here in America. Now, on October 20th, every year on October 20th, there are three things that I like to do. The first thing I like to do is think about the fact that it is my dad's birthday, and I like to think about how old he would have been. This year, he would have been 65. I know that because I take my age, which is 35, and I add 30 years because he had me when he was 30. So he would be 65 years old this year. And the second thing that I do is I put a picture of him as my profile picture on Facebook so that everyone knows what a good and thoughtful person I am. To remember that I once had a father, as if. After all, if I didn't put my father's picture on social media, how on earth would liberals know if I am the product of sperm meets egg? I know it is a weird thing to even think to ponder these days, that a human being might be raised in a womb without a sperm meets egg sort of situation, but now it is something that has to be said. It is amazing what constitutes virtue these days. 7,000 people die, and all you do is change your Facebook photograph, and then you feel good about yourself. The third thing I do on October 20th is I call my mom. Okay, that was a little bit misleading. I call my mom almost every day because that is what you do when you were raised without a dad, especially one who didn't voluntarily leave, but one that died. It's sheer numbers. Best case scenario, kids are raised by both biological parents. Sperm meets egg. I know that makes me sound homophobic because no gay or trans people could ever experience what every straight couple in the history of mankind gets to experience. But sorry, I don't know what to tell you other than tough. Life isn't fair. Sometimes you are attracted to someone of the same sex and you can't have kids. Sometimes your parents die. It's tough. Anyway, today I am going to experience the phone call I have with my mom every day on the phone with you, my beloved audience, today, because we actually, we have been discussing something that has been going on recently. And I know I sound like a bag of penne right now, but something that has been going on recently has been pissing me off especially, which is the California law that was just signed into law by the liberal governor of California that says that it is basically now, it's no longer a felony to knowingly and willingly give someone AIDS. To knowingly and willingly give someone AIDS. In other words, look, you are going to have sex with someone. Let's say you're on a second date and you want to have sex. If this person has AIDS and you don't have AIDS, they don't have to tell you if they have AIDS. So they could basically just give you AIDS, and worst case scenario, they spend 6 months in prison. That's it. Nothing like attempted murder like it used to be. Today we are talking to my mother, who sat next to my father, who was dying of AIDS, sat next to him and watched him die back in the 80s. Mom, how are you doing today? October 20th.
I'm doing fine today, Brett. And it's always nice to know that you honor your dad on special days like this one, as well as the day of his death, which will come up in November 19th.
That's right. There's 3 days on which I celebrate his life, and that's his birthday, his death day, and the hallmarky kind of Father's Day kind of thing. You know, I like to keep his memory alive all year round. Let's talk a little bit, Mom, about what it was like realizing, having sat with Dad in 1988. This is a little background information. We're gonna talk a little bit about the background, and then we're gonna get in to the nitty-gritty of what is going on today in California. Mom, tell us a little bit about what it was like receiving the diagnosis that the man that you married, who you had just had 3 kids with, was basically going to die in a couple years.
Well, we sat in the doctor's office, and the doctor said, make contingency plans and hope for the best. And that was all that we had to go on. And what was happening back then in 1986, which was when he was diagnosed, was that AIDS was a definite death sentence. There are probably less than a handful, maybe more, who have survived it. But most everyone that we knew back then who had contracted AIDS died from it. And it was like dominoes. It was just an awful time in our country. The president at the time did nothing. People were believing back then that it was a purely gay disease. They talked about quarantining my husband and people who had AIDS and sending them off somewhere to be shut away from society. I mean, this is the way it was back then. Friends were disappearing. In our particular case, though, we were very, very fortunate to have family, a very extended family, that was a wonderful support. And most of our friends, I would say the majority of our friends, were very, very empathetic. And yet there was still fear. The fear was rampant. It was scary. Absolutely.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we come back from our break. We are here with my mom, Ellen Buxtell.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful 4-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show, and of course, I'm guest hosting for the day. My name is Brett Segal, otherwise known as the Disgruntled Millennial. I am sick today. I was actually thinking about calling this one in, but I don't have AIDS. So, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, like you feel like crap today, but you know what? At least you don't have AIDS. That would be one of those things that you might call in sick for, but I don't have AIDS. I'm sitting here talking with my mom. We do this once a year. No, I'm just kidding. We talk all the time, but we always talk on my dad's birthday. My dad was a heterosexual male in the 1980s who contracted AIDS from a hemophilia related blood transfusion. And we are here talking with my mom because something has happened in California. Now, in California, you are basically allowed to go pass AIDS to people. You can have sex with someone. You don't have to tell them that you have AIDS. It's not like walking into a room where you might have a cold and you say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm a little bit sick." And then some, everyone has the option of whether, okay, we don't want to get sick, we'll stand away. We're talking about sexual relations with someone who you have the intention of infecting. And my mom was a part of the sort of original activist movement to educate people about AIDS. And we were just talking about the stigma that was going on in the South Florida community and the community all around the country. And we're going to get into how things have changed. But right now I want to sort of focus on how things were back then. There were definitely some experiences where my brother and my sister and I weren't allowed to go to school. Mom, tell us a little bit about some of the things that happened. That the reason, the importance for education on the subject of AIDS, and not a stigma.
Well, oh gosh, that's so many. There's so much. It's just an overwhelming subject. I mean, there's so many things that happened. We were given the news by a doctor at Jackson Memorial Hospital who said, make contingency plans and hope for the best. And that's what we did. We went out and we got our wills all in order. We set up and made sure that all of that was taken care of and all the things that we had control over doing. And of course, AIDS was the one thing we didn't have any control over. And then the next thing was who do we tell? Who don't we tell? Of course, our family knew, and everybody was telling us you can't tell your friends, you can't tell anybody, because what was happening is that parents were complaining and keeping their children away from families who had AIDS in the family. People did not know how it was transmitted. What we ended up doing, your dad and I decided that we were not going to be closeted. We're not going to be hide ourselves away. And we're going to step out and speak out. And that's what we did. We spent the next 2 years speaking to churches and schools and kids. And we together participated in coming up with an AIDS program for the school system and created a speakers bureau where we could go into the school system and talk about AIDS. And of course, right there in the school system, we were not allowed to use words like condoms and things like that. And I decided right off the bat that I don't work for the school system. I'm on a speakers bureau that comes in and is doing a service to the community. And I spoke about anything and everything I wanted to.
Right.
And
well, that was that was a totally different time. That was in a time when you had all them people, all them good old boys saying, you know what? Homosexuality is the disease and AIDS is the cure. That was the kind of time it was, and now it's
exactly right.
Right, and what you did, I think, during that time was so important by trying to allay the stigma. The only thing is that it's sort of talk a little bit more about how some of the things that you went through as far as the stigma. At a certain point, I know you told me that we weren't allowed to go to school at one point.
Well, we got a phone
camp.
call. Yeah, I got a phone call from the summer camp. It was a Jewish summer camp that someone had told them that this was the way he put it to me. He says, we were just informed that your husband has a communicable disease and we don't want your children to come to camp this summer unless they are tested. And I said, well, just what communicable disease are you talking about? And he barely could get the words out. He says, AIDS. I says, well, first of all, at that point, nobody really had been informed enough about how AIDS was transmitted. And I did not have AIDS, so my children did not have AIDS. And the way we lived our life in our home was precautionary. I didn't let them get a hold of his toothbrush. We were careful about sharing, having body fluids transmitted and all of the things. We hugged, we kissed, we were an affectionate family. There was no transmission of AIDS that was going to happen in that way. So we decided that, so basically, I went ahead and I got all of you tested, which tortured me to watch them taking blood from your little hands. And of course, I knew you were all that you all were negative and did not have AIDS. But the funny thing is, the guy says, well, you can go ahead and send them anyway, but we want to get results of the tests. And that was our first real, negative kind of reaction from the community. Teachers were afraid. So what we basically did was your dad and I, we jumped ahead of we instead of putting out fires, we decided we would go and stand up and say, here's the situation. My husband has AIDS. He is not someone who can give anyone AIDS unless he has sexual relations or you have some of his blood. And we started to educate people. That's what we did. Right. We ended up speaking out. We spoke to the President's Commission at one point when they came to Miami, Florida. Those people were in tears when they heard us speak.
Mom, a lot of that sounds to me, it sounds like, there could have been some education. Of course, there could have been some education. But as far as what people knew at the time, it doesn't seem to me like an unreasonable thing. Even at this point, I mean, a school, a summer camp, you've got like 500 kids running around. You've got who knows how many kids. And at the time, there was so little known about the virus that, to be honest, a little bit of fear was a little bit, was sort of understandable at the time. How did you balance the stigma with a rational sense of, keeping children safe?
Well, it was definitely a fear. People who weren't living with it obviously would hear, like anything else in our world, the way things go. People hear the wrong information. They don't get the truth about the matter. And the truth was the way what was in our life. The truth, we were living with it, and we lived with it every single day. And I watched your dad deteriorate and suffer through 2 years of just unbearable anticipation, first of all, of what was to come. And it was basically getting ready for him to die. And his brother too, who also was a hemophiliac. They both contracted AIDS through their blood products that they shared because the blood was contaminated with the AIDS virus through donors and through
who are unscreened, who are not screened,
and bad screening practices with the blood companies. So
we are going to be.
Whole story.
I got a hard break coming up, Mom. We will be right back. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Get me at Shaq General. We are on with my mom, Ellen Buxtell, on my dad's birthday. We'll be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Kevin Jackson Radio Show, and of course, I am guest hosting for the day. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. Of course, you can call me Mr. the Disgruntled Millennial. You can get me at Shaq General on Twitter. I am down here in Northern Florida, where I always broadcast to you live, completely and utterly free from your bigotry, microaggressions, racism, hatred, and patriarchy. And this week, I'm also free from your AIDS. I'm here today with my mother. We talk every year, once a year, on my dad's birthday. He died when I was 6 years old, and my mother and I only talk once a year. Actually, that is a complete and utter lie. We talk practically every day. She's pretty much all I've got. Mom, how's it going?
It's going fine. Proud of you.
Thank you, Mom. I appreciate that. That's very sweet of you. We have been talking today about my father, my mom's husband. Well, I guess they're still married. He's dead, but they're still technically, you know. Anyway, my father died from AIDS. Not to recap the last two segments, but he died from AIDS, hemophilia-related AIDS, back in 1988 when there was still a huge stigma. My mom and dad worked tirelessly to bring education into the community so that we could ultimately, through education, not stigma, eradicate AIDS from the world. And this is sort of a somber time of year for us. It's always the time of year where, Dad died he was born and died within a couple months. Within
a month.
52 years and 36 years and a couple months. October 20th, he was born. He died on November 19th, 36 years later. And
not even a month.
And this is just normally for us, this is sort of an emotional time. Let's talk about how you and Dad managed to sort of combat stigma, but without sort of acknowledging the need for aid. Look, nowadays with the PC culture, I know we've been talking a little bit about the past, but these days with the PC culture, people are trying to normalize so many terrible things. And one of the things that I want to talk about in a few minutes with this new California law, which basically allows people to go in and without any fear of an attempted murder charge, purposefully give someone a life-threatening disease that basically without constant, it's like someone who took one of your kidneys, or someone who has a kidney transplant. Without constant medicine, that person would literally just die. Their body would fail on them and they would die. And one of the things that you and Dad did was to promote the idea that what we don't need is a stigma. What we do need is education. But you never lost track of the idea that AIDS is a terrible, terrible thing.
Well, the thing about this law and the change is what it's doing is negating everything that we worked for 30 years ago.
That's right.
We first of all, recognizing that there have been some medical advancements in regards to treatments and drugs and things like that, and people are living longer with it. People are, the AIDS virus is a retrovirus. It was forever mutating and changing. But one of the things that was important back then was to make it clear that you can't just go out and
give people AIDS without some some repercussions.
Some repercussions, not only of giving somebody the AIDS, but that you have to take some responsibility. Now, with that being said, one of the things that we did in trying to educate people was to try to express to young people in particular who we have a harder time convincing of things, and that is that, before you become sexually engaged with someone else, you should have that conversation. Right. Take some personal responsibility for who you sleep with and who you have sex with. And, that's an important aspect. And those was parts of some of the things that was important to us to educate people, that you don't have to go out on a date and decide to sleep with somebody the first night just because it feels good, but that you are putting yourself at risk. However, somebody that goes out and purposely, maliciously tries to infect somebody, or perhaps out of fear doesn't tell them they have AIDS, should have some sort of consequence.
Well, I agree that it should have some sort of consequence, but I mean, the question I guess here is what kind of consequence? At this point, what they're doing is they're rolling back the consequences. It used to be that you could be put in prison for a few years. You could be put in prison for attempted murder. You could be put in prison for 8 years. Now, it's not even a felony anymore. It's a misdemeanor maximum. I mean, imagine you are some jilted lover and you just want to get back somehow. And, forget sex. All you need to do is really just transfer the blood from here to there. It would be not that difficult. I mean, it might be a little bit difficult, but I mean, if someone wanted to transmit AIDS to another person, it's like, it's basically like rolling back the penalty for murder. It's like rolling back the penalty for attempted murder. And it would be like rolling back the penalty for attempted rape. I mean, why is rape even wrong other than that it's just a violation of somebody else's personal space? You're not killing them, but you are basically changing them for the rest of their lives. And that's why I think rapists and murderers, they need to be put away. And also people who, attempt murder should also be put away. And just because there are more treatments now available, I wouldn't say that necessarily means that people should just be let off the hook. Like the idea is that there's so many social,
Well, no.
there's so many medical changes that it's not that big of a deal anymore.
No, but it is still a big deal because people are still dying from AIDS and suffering from AIDS. So yes, to have a consequence for somebody maliciously going out and doing that is not unreasonable.
Right. Well, I think even with even if the law doesn't really affect that many people, I mean, how many people, to be honestly, how many people are going out there just like, I'm just going to go around infecting someone with AIDS? I imagine it's not that many. I mean, even those of us who are super duper alarmists about certain things, I imagine that there's not a lot of people going out there and doing that. However, the people that are doing that should face some consequences. Can I ask you something? What do you think is a possible reasoning for a law like this? I mean, could you imagine the reaction if lawmakers were to say, we're going to roll back the penalties for attempted murder, or we're going to roll back the penalties for rape?
Sounds to me like the people who are writing this and trying to push this through don't know anything about it, have never experienced it, don't know the horrors of the disease, which there still is. And I think that people still are not educated. They really it's like any issue that's big in the news, for a couple of years, and then it sort of dissipates and it's not important anymore. But it still is, and it's still rampant around the world.
Right. Mom, I agree with everything that you have said in all of your speeches about the stigma. We have to get rid of the stigma. You don't want to just reject people who have AIDS, but you can't ignore the fact that they have AIDS in the first place. You can't just pretend like AIDS is just a normal way to live and it's just like any other way to live, living with AIDS. So, what do you think is the cause? Like, why do you think it has to do with equality? You think that people are just trying to look out for AIDS rights kind of a thing? And this is just protecting people's privacy? Because I would say that there's an alternative view to that. But, I mean, who knows what these crazy people are thinking. It's like they're ignoring the fact that we're dealing with a deadly disease.
Right. Well, privacy was a big issue back then, too. People were afraid to tell their insurance companies for fear. There were issues of people not getting coverage because they had AIDS. And, so I don't really know. I don't really know what the answer is, except that, or why somebody, I think the people that are, like I said, I think the people that are writing this and trying to change it really don't get it. They don't get the horror of this disease and how, it's not like cancer. You can't transmit cancer. You can transmit AIDS.
What's it like having someone that you love deteriorate from AIDS?
It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Your dad was 200 pounds, 6 feet tall when I met him. And when he died, I don't think he was more than 80 or 90 pounds. It was like he just walked out of a concentration camp. It was skin over bones. And he died in our home. He died lying next to me. And he knew he was going to die. He spoke out and talked about dying. He talked about how much he would miss his children. And he, in his beautiful letter that he wrote to you and your brother and sister, he told you to change the world, grow up and change the world. And that's what you're trying to do now.
We are here with Ellen Buxtell. You can get her at ellenbuxtell.com. That's ELLENBUKSTEL. She has been an AIDS awareness activist and a singer-songwriter for a large portion of her life, and pretty much most of mine. I am Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from Jacksonville. We will be right back on the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. You can get me at Shaq General on Twitter. We'll be right back with my mom on my dad's birthday.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations, of course. You are tuning into the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. I am your host, Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. Of course, you may refer to me as Mr. the Disgruntled Millennial. I broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in Northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, patriarchy, and today I'm most certainly free from your AIDS. California, obviously, we are talking about California, the new California law, which basically makes purposefully passing AIDS to a stranger or individual or someone that you claim to love. It makes it a misdemeanor instead of a felony that you can be put in prison for. I am here today with my mother. My mother is the wife of my father, of course, a man who died from hemophilia-related AIDS back in 1988. And we are talking about the catastrophic effects that AIDS has on people's lives. And when people in California promote laws like this, when people in any state or any place in the world promote laws like this, they don't truly understand what AIDS does to families. AIDS is a virus. You know, I hear all this stuff from environmentalists. Oh, human race is the virus. We need to eradicate the human race so that the earth can do its thing. Without the human race, the earth would be just a rock somewhere floating around in space. Without the human race here to recognize it, AIDS is one of those diseases that does nothing more than kill human beings. And to normalize a disease like AIDS, to make it so that it's not something that destroys families and destroys lives, to me, it's one of the greatest crimes. Because I am pro-human. I am a pro-human. I like humanity. With all its faults, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. My mother told me that you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's what AIDS does. That's what it seems like California is trying to do by normalizing AIDS, by saying, oh, well, AIDS is just as good as any other way to live. Now, my mom and my family, of course, I was a child at the time. I was the oldest of three. I am the oldest of three. I was 6 years old when my father died. My brother was 4. My sister was 2. I have a couple fleeting memories of my father. I'm going to tell you what my memories are right now. I remember him storming across the house once or twice. That's my memory of my father. Alive, of course. My other memory of my father is him laying in his casket. Now I'm here with my mom. I call her every day. We talk all the time. She's all I've got left other than my brother and my sister and, you know, a tight-knit group of friends. But my mom is here to talk about the catastrophic effects of AIDS on people's lives. And though we need to get rid of the stigma, that it's not something that should be stigmatized, we still have to acknowledge the fact that it is a human disease that is meant to do nothing other than kill human beings and provide human beings with nothing but catastrophe. Mom, it's been sort of an emotional it's been a sort of an emotional hour, and it's going to get a little bit more emotional because right now you're going to read to us my father's dying letter to me and my brother and my sister. Mom, could you read my father's dying letter to me and my brother and my sister? The one keepsake that we have to remember him by, other than, you know, a couple videos and his legacy of education in the community.
Your father came to me about a year before he died, and handed me a letter, a stack of letters, actually. And it was a letter to everybody in our immediate family. And one of those letters was a letter that I was asked to read to you and your brother and sister when you were old enough to understand and grasp what he was saying. And so the night that he died, I put it away in a drawer, put all of them in a drawer. And the night that he died, the family came over to the house, and I can remember your dad sitting on the couch, sort of in a daze. I mean, your grandpa. And I went to the drawer that I had put it into, and I got it out, and I gave each person their letter that was from your dad. And this letter here that I have in front of me now is a letter that he wrote to you and your brother and sister. Brett, Todd, and Margot, this is real hard for me, my babies. You three are the reasons I hung on, the foundation of my will to live, and the saddest part of knowing that I was going to die. Margot, you used to say when you were almost 2, "Watch me, Daddy," and then you do something silly. I watched you over and over again. I wish I could watch you now. Pete and repeat. Your brothers. You really can't imagine how wonderful that is. If you overlook any differences you might eventually have, your brother will be the one person in your life that will always be there for you. Don't ever let that change. It's so important. My children, grow up. Change the world. Your success is measured by your integrity. Be there for your friends. Love each other. And if you're old enough now, remember that I, your father, loved you, needed you, and was so very proud to have you in my life for as long as I did. I love you, Brett. I love you, Toddy. I love you, Margot. Then he signed it in his illegible initials.
His signature and my signature look somewhat alike. It looks like a little bit of chicken scratch, just like he had a D with a little chicken scratch, and I have a B with a little chicken scratch. His name was Douglas Brett Segal. I was named after my father, Douglas Brett Segal. My name, of course, is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. And that, of course, is the one of the keepsakes that my father left behind. And when I hear about people in California talking about AIDS rights, that's something that people like me and my mom and my dad knew about. That's not something that people who just want to go out and vengefully infect other people with AIDS knows about. That's a little bit of a different thing. And it sort of colors this whole entire circumstance that's going on in California in such a different way, because these people don't know the kind of catastrophe that this has for families. They just don't know. They don't know how it trickles down into the lives of other people, into the lives of children. These are, I mean, imagine me, of course, I mean, I'm grown up now. I can speak in complete sentences, but I was 6 years old when all of this happened. I was 6 years old when my father wrote that letter. I was barely even capable of understanding what he was saying in that letter. And already my life was affected by the AIDS virus. Now imagine a world after January 1st, the world that we are about to see in California come to fruition. January 1st, where you can just viciously and maliciously and vindictively inflict this kind of pain onto any family that you decide, with virtually no consequence to your person. It's just a misdemeanor. I don't know. Go ahead, Mom.
Do we know? Is it known who initiated this change specifically?
Yes. It's the liberal governor of California and several gay government officials who I guess they think they're doing favors for the gay community. I guess they're doing favors for the gay community. You know, I mean, look, I'm just going to put it out there. Gay people don't have their own kids, right? Unless they have a heterosexual person involved, or unless they have a person of the opposite sex involved. But gay couples don't have their own kids. So why would they care, honestly? What reason would these government officials have to care about people like me, people like you?
Don't know.
Talk about privacy. Talk about privacy. Talk about equality. I'm just not sure what would possess some people to go down this road.
So, then it makes it even doubly more important to continue the education to people growing up who are young in schools, to perpetuate the AIDS education and explain to young girls and young boys how to protect themselves, that they need to think about what they're doing and not be so cavalier about sex, which is unfortunately the way it is right now.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
You boys both have the virus? Are you sure?
We're not just sure. We're HIV positive. Will you stop it with that? What part of this is funny to you? Kyle, we need to try to find out... What part of being infected with a deadly disease do you find funny? I don't think it's funny, Kyle. Then stop saying you're not just sure you're HIV positive. This isn't funny. AIDS isn't funny. Dying isn't funny, so shut the up. Well, excuse me, Kyle, for trying to keep some optimism, you know? Sometimes when things seem their darkest, you just need to try and stay HIV positive. But if you want to be so HIV negative all the time... Knock it off! Right now! This isn't funny! At all! Are you sure? Yes! Are you HIV positive? Ow! Kyle!
Of course, that was Cartman and Kyle from South Park. We are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. It is a beautiful Friday afternoon. We are starting to see the first vestiges of the cool weather coming, and we love it down here in Florida. I, of course, am broadcasting to you live from North Florida, where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. I am, again, Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. We are here with my mom, Ellen Buckstell. She is a community activist. She is a singer-songwriter. You can get her at ellenbuckstel.com. That's ELLENBUKSTEL. You can listen to some of her music. Mom, we've been talking a lot about Dad. We've been talking about the AIDS virus. We've been talking about a lot about the law in California that basically allows people to sort of indiscriminately at this point. I mean, the law is being rolled back. I mean, let's just face it. People are more and more allowed to indiscriminately infect people with the AIDS virus. And I want to leave the audience with a couple final thoughts from you in that regard before I play a song that you wrote that was adapted by a letter that my dying father who had AIDS wrote to me and my brother and my sister. My dying father from AIDS. When we talk about AIDS, always, we must remember that we are talking about a deadly human virus. Mom, take us out.
Well, I think I'd like to basically repeat again how much this action negates what we tried so hard to do in the beginning of this epidemic, which was 30 years ago. And I think there are so many people out there. I don't like to think that there are people out there who would purposely and consciously want to infect somebody, but I believe that there likely are people who would want to do that. And I think that we tried hard to encourage, I don't know the specific law, but the idea of people being responsible for their actions and having it
having some sort of consequence for people who would be malicious about it.
I definitely appreciate that. I definitely agree with that, of course. You know, if there had been the kind of screening methods that there are today, then it would have colored Dad's infection a lot differently, because back then they didn't have any idea how to screen for AIDS. So Dad was a hemophiliac. Of course, that is a blood disease, a hereditary disease where your blood doesn't clot. You could jump on a pogo stick, fall down, start to bleed, but you wouldn't stop bleeding. So these children, these hemophiliac children, they need blood products. So at that time, in the 1980s, there was no blood screening for any of that kind of stuff. There was no blood screening for AIDS. They, of course, didn't know whether or not, like, a bum could roll off the street with AIDS. He could have been a homosexual. He could have been a drug user. He could have been just any old person who had AIDS, but they wouldn't have been able to tell. Nowadays, it makes it so much more egregious, I would say.
Yes.
Nowadays, it makes it so much more egregious that we can totally prevent these things from happening. If you live the kind of lifestyle where you are having sex with lots and lots of people, it is incumbent on you to get yourself checked, to get yourself tested. I see even in Jacksonville, the bastion of the red state. This is the big part that without Jacksonville, Donald Trump never would have won Florida. Without Jacksonville, Florida would not even be a swing state that anyone would have to worry about. It would be Miami, Broward, West Palm Beach, bastions of liberalism that would basically control the entire state, just like California. Florida could easily find itself in a situation without a place like Jacksonville as another California. And even here in Jacksonville, there are billboards everywhere, as far as the eye can see. Free testing, free AIDS tests, free blood tests. They do not want this. We do not want this thing to be spread. The idea is not to stigmatize, because a lot of folks are saying out there, they're saying, well, if, you know, the law, the way it is now, you know, it prevents people from getting tested in the first place. Personally, I would think that's the exact opposite. I would think that 8 years in prison you would damn well better get tested before having sex if you live some sort of lifestyle that might be considered questionable.
Well, and I think that on the opposite side of this issue, that along with this change in law should come some education and encouragement for people who are going to either become sexually active, you know, in the beginning, or even people who are currently sexually active, that they need to know who they're sleeping with. And they need to know. I mean, when your dad died and I became single all of a sudden, the next relationship that I got into, I had insisted that this person be tested, and he was.
And I think that's definitely some great advice. You know, a lot of people, you know, you're absolutely right. There is the flip side to this situation, you know. I mean, it's something that a lot of people don't think about these days. You know, a lot of folks, they poo-poo abstinence, or they poo-poo the idea of, you know, looking before you leap. But, right, you know, at the same time, at this point, with laws like this going on in California, it could absolutely prevent you from getting AIDS. You know, I mean, nowadays, when people are sort of be allowed to do this thing more and more indiscriminately.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, now, you know, like I said, never to create a stigma, but let's not defy reality here. There's no way to defy reality here, and you can't even try to defy reality here. AIDS will kill you. AIDS kills human beings. That is what it does. That is its function.
And causes great suffering in the process.
Absolutely. Mom, thank you so much. Mom, Ellen Buxtel, I really want to thank you so much for joining Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, on the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. We are going to be back with a lot more. We've got so much to talk about. We got Harvey Weinstein. We've got the NFL kneelers. We've got so much more to talk about. I'm going to give a little rundown on the Eminem situation, even though it's not really that much of a situation. He's kind of a loser. Anyways, we will be back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful four-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Everyone has AIDS. AIDS, AIDS, AIDS. AIDS, 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 AIDS. Everyone has AIDS. And so this is the end of our story. And everyone is dead from AIDS. It took from me my best friend, my only true pal, my only bright star. Well, I'm gonna march on Washington, lead the fight and charge the brigades. There's a hero inside of all of us. I'll make them see everyone has AIDS. My father, AIDS. My sister, AIDS. My uncle and my cousin and her best friend, AIDS. The gays and the straights and the whites and the spades. Everyone has AIDS. My grandma and my dog go blue. Pop has got it and so do you. Come on everybody, we got quilting to do. We're gonna break down these barricades. Everyone has AIDS, 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 AIDS.
Of course, that is Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park, in their musical comedy Team America World Police. And, of course, that was written back in around the late 1990s, I believe. And, of course, they couldn't have been more prophetic, I guess you could say. Everyone has AIDS. The gays, the straights, the whites, the spades, everyone has AIDS. California is leading the charge, of course, on this. Just like it's illegal to murder someone, just like it's illegal to rape someone, just like it's illegal to maim someone, it ought to be illegal to give someone a deadly virus intentionally. Not just illegal, like illegal. Not just slap on the wrist, illegal, but put your butt in prison. Put your arse in prison. I mean, look, the left loves to come forward with all these anecdotal stories. Well, my grandmother can't afford health care, so therefore, universal health care. Or my black friend had someone said something racist to him, or someone microaggressed him in some way. There's an implicit racism, institutional racism. Everyone is racist. They like to use these anecdotal stories. Well, I'm not going to use an anecdotal story. Well, I mean, I guess this whole show has been sort of one anecdotal story, but I don't think you need to be a relative of someone who died of AIDS in order to have an opinion on this. All you need is to value your life and not want to die So you don't need to know someone who was raped in order to know that rape is wrong. You don't need to know someone who was murdered in cold blood to know that murder is wrong. You don't need to stick your finger in an electric socket to know that raw electricity could kill you. The anecdote on my part isn't to prove some sort of point. It's to remind people why we fight AIDS in the first place, why AIDS is a problem in the first place, why there even was a stigma in the first place. I can get, look, it was a brand new disease back in the 80s. And I just happened to have been born in a time when my parents were told that I couldn't go to school, that their kids couldn't go to school unless they were tested. Totally reasonable request, by the way. Not an unreasonable request when you don't know a lot about a virus that will kill you. That is a literal death sentence. It's not a virtual death sentence. All these people are saying, oh, it's just there's different cultural norms. Medical advancements have led to blah, blah, blah. Without without constant treatment, AIDS takes over and then you die. And it's not a quick death and it's not a slow death either. It's just the kind of death that makes you figure out your own mortality and acknowledge that maybe you might have made different decisions in life. My father was one of the unlucky few who literally didn't do anything out of the ordinary. There was no glory hole sex in the bathroom stalls. There was no IV drug use or anything like that. He was a hemophiliac who had a blood transfusion. And you know what? Here's your white male, cisgendered white male patriarchy. In a time when AIDS wasn't being taken seriously because the only people who got AIDS were the homosexuals and IV drug users, my father, cisgendered, straight, white male, family man, came forward and brought this subject out into the light, only to have these two gay public officials in California basically slash down all the things that my father worked for by trying to normalize AIDS instead of saying, okay, we need to educate AIDS out of existence. These people are saying, well, AIDS is just tickety-boo. AIDS is just fine. It's like the common cold. Even when I have a common cold and someone invites me to a party or someone invites me to a gathering, I say, look, I have a cold. I don't know if we should do this tonight. I kind of have a cold. You give them the option to say, okay, well, come on over. We'll risk it. It's no big deal. You give them the option. It's polite. And when it's a common cold, it's common courtesy. When it's AIDS, it's life and death. Now, conservatives get made fun of for saying that liberals are trying to roll back the pillars of Western civilization. Now, you would think that because it is, according to HIV.gov, 70% of people who get AIDS are gay. That's not hate facts. That is just facts. Those are statistics. 70% of the people who have AIDS are gay. Now, let me ask you liberals something, because I know you all are thinking that we are just a bunch of flyover state conservative people, redneck, uneducated, no college degree, that we just sit here going, you know what? It's damn faggots that are, that's the disease, but AIDS is the cure. Homosexuality is the disease, but AIDS, of course, is the cure. That's God trying to get rid of the gay plague. That's what you think. If that's what you think, why do you think I would be standing out against this? Being a staunch conservative, being a right-winger, being a part of the hardcore right-wing, the vast right-wing conspiracy. Why would I stand in the way of 70% of people who are being infected by AIDS, who are gay, being wiped off the map? If this mainly affects the gay, this is just one of those things when the snake eats its own tail, the leftist snake eats its own tail, because this is something that is being put forth by leftists. It is leftists who are trying to kill gays. Most of those gays are black. It is the leftists who are trying to get black gays killed. How about that? Try that one on for size, lefties. Lefties, by you supporting this law, you are basically saying that you hate black homosexuals. Liberals, if you really care about minorities in lower income communities, get rid of this godforsaken evil law which is going to get people killed.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am guest hosting for the day. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. And today, especially, I am free from your patriarchy because we have just heard from the Slut Walk. The Slut Walk. Yeah, y'all remember the Slut Walk? Y'all remember the Dyke March? A lot of the same folks who go to the Slut Walk also go to the Dyke March. Well, it's really no wonder that these folks have decided to make common cause with anti-Semitics, with anti-Semitism. They are basically banning any sort of Zionist display, which basically means a Star of David. After the scandal that was involving the ejection of Jewish women carrying the Star of David flags in Chicago's Dyke March, another organization said that it is going to follow by basically banning any sort of support for Israel. So if you're a dyke and you want to support the Dyke March and you believe you're basically just a Jew who's from Israel and you support Israel and you want to represent Israel, if you are a lesbian in Israel or from Israel, you cannot bring a flag that has a Jewish star on it. You can't bring a flag that represents that you are Jewish or that you are Israeli. Because at the end of the day, we all know that this Dyke March, Slut March stuff, it's not really about women's rights. It's not really about the alleged rape culture. It's really not about victim shaming or victim blaming. We all know that that's not what it's about, because if that's what it were about, then they would have no problem with having Jewish representatives or even representatives from Israel or even someone who overtly supported Israel as a nation state. You see, the reason that these Dyke March and the Slut Walk, slut, I just love that word. It's like one of those words. If you just put a little stink on it, it just sounds so slut. The Slut Walk. You know, it's organizations like the Dyke March and the Slut Walk that have made common cause with the Palestinians. Now, in order to really understand where this is coming from, you have to know a little bit of the history of the Middle East. You have to know a little bit about the history of Israel versus the disputed territories known as Palestine. Really, there is no such place. But after years and years and years of placating the aggressive Palestinians, as you would call them, after years and years of placating them, it has basically become a part of the narrative. They're sort of permanent refugees, I guess you could say. But it's not the Israelis that have kept them in a refugee status. It is the surrounding countries. Long story short, Israel has always gotten the raw end of the stick as far as the narrative goes. Even though, according to the left's own identity politics, you know, they say the numbers they count. Oh, well, there's so many black men in prison, right? Oh, it couldn't be that black people are committing that much crime. It could be, you know, like what they like to say is that it's because of racism. It's racist policies. It's the racist right wing that is putting more black people in jail than white people. Now, by your own logic, 1.7 billion Muslims versus 14 million Jews, a piddly 14 million. In the entire world, 6 million Jews live in Israel alone. Now, if you want to use the left's own logic, the sheer numbers don't say what they think that they're trying to say. Who are the real oppressors? 1.7 billion versus 14 million? I mean, it's no secret that Nazi Germany made common cause with Arabs all over the world because they made common cause in killing Jews. Now, if you think that because there's only 14 million left and not 8 million or 6 million or 2 million or 100,000 or 100 or 0, you think that because there are some Jews left, somehow the Jews are oppressing the Arabs. Israel takes up a small portion, a very, very tiny portion of the Middle East where only 6 million Jews live, plus a lot of Arabs that live there in Israel. What an oppressive state. They let the Arabs live there. There are no there are no Jews in Arab countries. But no, it's Israel that's the oppressors. Now, it's this same postmodern socialist junk that unites the Arabs in the disputed territories with people like Hillary Clinton and Uma Abedin and the Dyke March and the Slut Walk and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and all those people, because they're all just a bunch of hardcore left-wingers. So it's no wonder the Slut Walk would literally ban Jewish flags. This was the scandal. A rainbow flag with a Jewish star on it, with the Star of David on it. Banned from the Slut Walk and from the Dyke March. Now, I think a lot of this boils down to jealousy, because even with a minuscule 6 million people in Israel and only taking up a very, very small portion of the Middle East, they've managed to turn it into a paradise on earth. And it is pure jealousy. Pure jealousy. Instead of trying to take the Jews down, instead of trying to take the Israelis down, how about adopt a couple of their values, for example? Like turning a desert into a prosperous land where you can grow things. Geographically speaking, it's not like the other Arab countries in the Middle East are a lot different than Israel. It's the value system that takes place there. It's the way of life. It's the Jewish way of life. This is why it all boils down to anti-Semitism. They all like to say, oh, we're not anti-Semitic, we're just anti-Zionist. Anti-Zionist basically says that so you're not anti-Semitic, you just don't think that Jews should have a place to live. You think that Arabs should have a place to live? You think that the Mexicans should have a place to live? You think everyone should have a place to live except Americans? Everyone belongs where they are except Americans. Americans are conquerors. We're imperialists. We're white supremacists. I love it how everyone talks about Trump like he's this big Nazi. Punch a Nazi. It's okay to punch a Nazi. A lot of the same folks that make common cause with the Palestinians are the same people who here in America say, go ahead and punch a Nazi. The Palestinians are more like Nazis. The Palestinians are like Nazis. They want to wipe Jews off the face of the planet. That's like, it doesn't get much more Nazi than that, does it? How much more Nazi does it get than to want to wipe every Jew off the face of the planet? Not just, walking around maybe thinking anti-Semitic thoughts in your, oh, he Jewed me out, or oh, he's, what a Jew. Not like that. I'm talking about proactively trying to wipe an entire race, an entire culture off the face of the planet. Why are the leftists making common cause with these people? And in the same breath, turning around, calling Trump supporters Nazis. It makes absolutely no sense. And what makes even less sense is Jews. Jews who think that they are safe among leftists. Who think that the leftists won't sell them out at the first given chance. Because guess what? When Israel's gone and America has been completely Islamicized, there isn't going to be anywhere for any Jew to go to find refuge. And you're certainly not going to find it at one of these slut walk dyke marches. It's so funny. All these ladies, they're like, oh, we can't. They do these marches on Washington because of victim blaming when women around the world are having their genitals mutilated. And Israel, of all places, gets the rap. Israel is one of the only places in the Middle East, probably the only place in the Middle East, where you actually might be able to have a slut walk or a dyke march. You know what they do to gays in other Muslim countries in the Middle East? These slut walks don't just go so far as to ban any sort of Israeli or Zionist paraphernalia or signal or sign. They actually make you express solidarity with Palestine. They make you renounce any previous connections you have had with Israel. Are you now? Have you ever been a member of a group with ties to Israel. Repudiate and repent. And if you're openly Jewish in one of these organizations, they automatically assume that you are pro-Zionist. And when I say pro-Zionist, I mean someone who believes that Israel has a right, that Jews have a right to self-determination. That's basically it. I'm sorry, this is totally a Muslim versus Jews thing. It's like Arabs, Israel versus Palestine. That's all just window dressing for the big conflict, which is Muslims versus Jews. And to be honest, I fear for the left. I fear for the Dyke March and for these sluts. I fear for those sluts. Because one day the Muslims are coming for them too.
You gotta take a piss? Yeah, my vagina's about to spray. Yeah, I gotta take a piss too. All right, let's go to the bathroom together. Oh my God, last night I had sex with a Brazilian. Can you believe that? Oh my God, you're such a slut. How many is that? Do you smell that? Oh my God, what the hell is that?
Hey ladies, excuse me, could you pass me some TP?
Oh my God, what are you doing in here?
Shut up, bigot.
Of course, lefties always get their comeuppance in the end because they eventually will eat their own tail. This is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live. We will be right back.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Hi, I'm here to sign up for ISIS.
You have come up to the wrong booth, boy. We are recruiting for CARE, an Islamic peace group. What does this look like to you? Some sort of gay pride parade?
I understand your oppression. I'm an ally.
Boy, get out of here before I decapitate you on camera. Peacefully, of course. This is a Muslim-only safe space.
I am a Muslim. I converted yesterday. I'm a genderqueer Muslim, okay? I would do anything. And I mean anything.
You would do anything now, would you? Okay, right this way.
Oh, goody.
Ahmed, we have a live one. Get the device.
Ooh, I like devices.
Okay, now take off your shirt for a moment.
Ooh, my God.
All right, strap it on like this. Yes,
Ooh,
like
that
this.
tickles.
Ahmed, activate the device.
Ooh, is this a vibrating device?
Okay, my gay friend. You see that elementary school over there?
Yes, of course. There's kids playing and dancing and laughing and frolicking with joy.
Yes. Now go over there. Walk into the middle of the school. Throw your arms out into the air like you just made sweet love to Aisha and scream, Allahu Akbar!
Wait a minute, that seems a little strange.
Now, you did say you would do anything to help liberate the oppressed Muslim race, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, this is what needs to be done. It's totally safe. Go for it.
Well, okay. Allahu Akbar, kids!
Idiots. Greetings and salutations. You are tuning into the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. You may refer to me as Mr. the Disgruntled Millennial, of course. No stolen valor here. We are broadcasting to you live, always, from Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and, of course, your patriarchy. That was a little audio, of course. I love to make fun of the left for eating its own tail. Of course, there is nothing funny about terrorism. There is nothing funny about suicide bombers. And there's really nothing funny about entire communities getting duped into following something that is like existentially bad for them. What do the LGBT community, what do they think is going to happen once this country is Islamicized? What do they think is going to happen to them? Are they going to be given a safe space? Are they going to be given coloring books and Snickers? Are the Muslims going to be that nice to them? Once Taqiyya is finished, once they can finally take off the mask and implement Sharia law. I mean, that's where we're headed ultimately, right? A bunch of sluts walking around and glory holes here and glory holes there and a bunch of people just giving each other AIDS. I'm sorry. Look, I have a libertine edge. I really, really do. I can get down and party just like the rest of them. Trust me, I can. Believe me, I can. But this is just out of control. I mean, you're not gonna march for an actual rape culture in Islamic culture, but you're gonna march for victim blaming, alleged victim blaming, victim shaming. I mean, it's not enough for me to say that I think that all rapists should be put to death or castrated or something equally horrible. It's not enough for me to say that I think that rape is absolutely horrible and it's an absolutely terrible, disgusting, heinous crime. I actually have to say that, well, you know what? You have absolutely no agency. A woman has absolutely no agency whatsoever in what happens to her. Now, if you think that these two different kinds of rapes are different, then you might have another thing coming. I'm talking about one where there's a person who is maybe in their house and a burglar comes in and the person has no idea. They're just at home in their safe place, relaxing, and they get raped by an intruder. Absolutely terrible. Absolutely disgusting. And then we're talking about a different kind of circumstance. When they talk about victim blaming, they're not talking about that woman who was just in her home minding her own business. They're talking about girls who are out at clubs and bars getting super duper hammered, scantily clad, wearing skimpy, skanky, slutty dresses, and then they put themselves in these stupid situations. They do not protect their pearl, so to speak. Both rapes are absolutely terrible and absolutely wrong. Both rapists should be punished equally. But let's not pretend that some people have some agency. If you're going to be doing that, then at least go out with a bodyguard or someone who can protect you. Buddy system. Watch your drinks. Make sure, I don't know, like, I don't even know how girls do this. I mean, most people do the buddy system. But the idea that you don't have agency in what happens to you is, to me, supremely anti-feminist. It's anti-woman. That is anti-woman to say that women don't have the freedom of choice and the wherewithal to protect themselves. And that's what these women are marching with, the slut march. This is what they're marching for. They want the right to be as absolutely reckless as possible and still be protected. Of course they should be, of course, rape. I can't even believe I have to explain this. And I can't even believe I have to explain that women have agency. Just like men have agency, women also have agency. I give women the respect of their own agency. To me, it would be totally disrespectful to say that a woman has no control over her circumstance and her station in life. I respect women too much, and I believe the inequality between the sexes too much to relieve a woman of her moral agency in her own life and in her own self-protection. And that is what these sluts miss. Hey, they can call themselves sluts. I can call them sluts too. They're sluts. Self-proclaimed sluts. These are the people that say, we don't need no man. We don't need no man. I'm a powerful woman. I don't need a man. That was a really awful woman voice. But yeah, we don't need a man. Men are stupid. Men are gay. Screw the patriarchy. These are the same women who, when they get pregnant from their slutty behavior, are going to expect the men in the world to pay for their abortions free and clear. Not only to okay the abortions, but they have to pay for the abortions. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You don't need a man until you need a man. But no, if I say I don't want to pay for your abortion from your slutty behavior, apparently that means that I'm anti-woman and that I don't believe that women should have health care. Oh my God, lefties, I can't believe you. You guys just never cease to disgust me.
Kevin Jackson's suicide hotline for liberals. How may I help you?
I'm gonna end it now. I'm in my bathtub, holding a toaster. I wanted to be a part of the Black Lives Matter resistance to fight the fascism of Donald Trump. But when I was setting a cop car on fire, that fascist cop pepper sprayed me.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
No, that's not the worst part. The pepper spray hurt so much that I screamed out for my mommy, and someone put it on YouTube and it went viral. Now I'm that guy that screamed out for his mommy. Everybody's making fun of me, and everybody hates me. Nobody likes me. I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna do it now.
I want you to listen to me very carefully. Don't do this, all right? You don't have to do it like this. There is a better way. Here's what I want you to do. Carefully put down the toaster. Get out of the bathtub. Dry off. Okay, take a deep breath. And once you've calmed down completely, drive to the Empire State Building, light your own car on fire, climb up to the top, and do a belly flop into your burning car. You pansy-ass snowflake. Nothing screams moral commitment like doing a belly flop into a burning car, you phony. A toaster oven in the bathtub? Could you get any more cliche?
What kind of suicide hotline is this?
Are you a proud social justice warrior? Do you believe that the so-called facts of reality are nothing more than racist, irrelevant social constructs perpetuated by white supremacy? If you answered yes to both of these questions, you must boycott the Disgruntled Millennial. The Disgruntled Millennial threatens the very existence of humanity. He espouses dangerous ideas like small government, school choice, property rights, and worst of all, he shoots guns. He's practically Hitler. You must act now. Conservatives are becoming more and more emboldened to make their own life decisions. We can't let that happen. So whether you're drawing on coloring books in your safe space or setting police cars on fire, always remember to hashtag boycott the DM. That's boycott the DM. Boycott the DM. Boycotts work.
Again, this is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial. I'm always broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, your hatred, your microaggressions, your racism, and that damn there patriarchy. We don't take kindly to intolerance around here. All right, we got more for you. We will be right back.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. My name is Brett Segal. I broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, patriarchy, and your California AIDS. I am pretty sad today. My dad was born today in 1955, October 20th in 1955, and he died from the AIDS virus in November 19th, 1988, which was right around the time that Ronald Reagan was president and every single leftist in the world was basically chastising the man for not doing enough for AIDS. AIDS happens to have a very long incubation period. So by the time the AIDS epidemic sort of came around, it really wasn't likely that there was going to be a lot of research done in the meantime. They didn't know how it was spread. There was a lot of stigma involved. That's right. Not necessarily on the, that stigma did not necessarily rest on the backs of conservatives. There were a lot of, redneck folks out there who were, the super hardcore religious right who were saying, homosexuality is the disease and AIDS is the cure. So why don't we just let the AIDS run its course and we'll, just all the homosexuals will die and that's just God's punishment for being gay. And of course, the liberals liked, the liberal narrative of this time was that Ronald Reagan totally supported this point of view, that he was just absolutely, he ignored the AIDS virus. He ignored the epidemic that was going on back then. And it's one of those myths that is just such a nasty, disgusting, gross myth because it's absolutely not true. It's one of those things that the left likes to do to demonize conservatives and to demonize Reaganites, people who actually supported Ronald Reagan back then and also now to this day. What they like to say is that the AIDS epidemic was one of the stains on the Reagan administration. The AIDS epidemic, his reaction to the AIDS epidemic was one of the stains. They couldn't ignore the Reagan economy. They couldn't ignore the fact that everyone was riding the gravy train during the Reagan years. So they had to pin something on him. They had to make him seem like he was this cold, callous man who just wanted homosexuals to die. And a lot of liberals fell into that narrative. And to be honest, I think a lot of people in my family fell into that narrative too. Once my father contracted AIDS, look, AIDS was a death sentence back then. It was just a literal death sentence. And I understand that a lot of folks were, running around kind of like headless chickens, making sure that there was somebody to blame. And Ronald Reagan was the scapegoat in that way. I'm going to play a clip, Ronald Reagan's remarks to the American Foundation for AIDS Research. We're going to hear what a terrible, nasty, homophobic bigot Ronald Reagan was during this speech. Of course, I am just kidding. He was obviously none of those things. But what I want to do is I want to lay waste to the idea that conservatives just want AIDS patients to die. Because you know what? That's what the people in California want. This new law that says that you can just go around passing AIDS to people. First of all, my father would be rolling around in his grave if he knew that there was such a law going on right now. And he would also be rolling around in his grave knowing that there are liberals out there who supported it. Because my father was one of the pioneers of AIDS education back in the 1980s. He was one of the straight men with AIDS who actually went out there and tried to make common cause with all the other AIDS victims, with all the other AIDS patients, and to bring awareness and to eradicate AIDS through education. To eradicate AIDS through education. Now we have a society in California that they are trying to normalize AIDS. Instead of trying to eradicate AIDS, they are trying to normalize it. Now, who is the real bad guy in this case? Who? Certainly not Ronald Reagan. Let's hear a little bit of Ronald Reagan. It's kind of a long clip, but I think it's important that you hear what he had to say so we can lay waste to this narrative that says that Ronald Reagan ignored the AIDS epidemic. It's just not true.
I want to talk tonight about the disease that has brought us all together. It has been talked about, and I'm going to continue. The poet W.H. Auden said that the true men of action in our times are not the politicians and statesmen, but the scientists. I believe that's especially true when it comes to the AIDS epidemic. Those of us in government can educate our citizens about the dangers. We can encourage safe behavior. We can test to determine how widespread the virus is. We can do any number of things. But only medical science can ever truly defeat AIDS. We've made remarkable progress, as you've heard already. To think we didn't even know we had a disease until June of 1981 when 5 cases appeared in California. The AIDS virus itself was discovered in 1984. The blood test became available in 1985. A treatment drug, AZT, has been brought to market in record time, and others are coming. Work on a vaccine is now underway in many laboratories, as you've been told. In addition to all the private and corporate research underway here at home and around the world, this fiscal year, the federal government plans to spend $317 million on AIDS research and $766 million overall. Next year, we intend to spend 30% more on research, $413 million out of $1 billion overall. Spending on AIDS has been one of the fastest growing parts of the budget. And ladies and gentlemen, it deserves to be. We're also tearing down the regulatory barriers so as to move AIDS from the pharmaceutical laboratory to the marketplace as quickly as possible. It makes no sense, and in fact it's cruel, to keep the hope of new drugs from dying patients. And I don't blame those who were out marching and protesting to get AIDS drugs released before the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted. I sympathize with them, and we'll supply help and hope as quickly as we can. Science is clearly capable of breathtaking advances, but it's not capable of miracles. Because of AIDS' long incubation period, it'll take years to know if a vaccine works. These tests require time, and this is a problem money cannot overcome. We will not have a vaccine on the market until the mid to late 1990s at best. Since we don't have a cure for the disease and we don't have a vaccine against it, the question is, how do we deal with it in the meantime? How do we protect the citizens of this nation? And where do we start? For one thing, it's absolutely essential that the American people understand the nature and the extent of the AIDS problem. And it's important that federal and state governments do the same. I recently announced my intention to create a national commission on AIDS because of the consequences of this disease on our society. We need some comprehensive answers. What can we do to defend Americans not infected with the virus? How can we best care for those who are ill and dying? How do we deal with a disease that may swamp our healthcare system? The commission will help crystallize America's best ideas on how to deal with the AIDS crisis. We know some things already, the cold statistics. But I'm not going to read you gruesome facts on how many thousands have died or most certainly will die. I'm not going to break down the numbers and categories of those we've lost, because I don't want Americans to think AIDS simply affects only certain groups. AIDS affects all of us.
AIDS affects all of us. We will be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
Beth Cook Moranville, author of Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope.
Hope, that wonderful, wonderful four-letter word that you may feel completely out of. I wrote this book to give you great hope. It's not too late. If fetal position is an all too familiar place for you, I understand. If the next 60 seconds are too long, this book is for you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're dealing with divorce or death or sickness, take hope. You are going to make it through this pain. Don't roll your eyes. I've walked this road and I know it. The best is yet to come.
Closer Than Your Breath, a book of hope from author and speaker Beth Cook Moranville, can be found on Amazon.com or Kindle.com. For more information, visit closerthanyourBreath.com or on Facebook at Closer Than Your Breath.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. Of course, you are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, and I broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, patriarchy, and white supremacy. Things are definitely getting a little hairy down here in Florida. Yesterday, there was a speech by Richard Spencer at the University of Florida Gainesville campus. Of course, there was massive protests saying that this guy can't speak. We can't have white supremacists speaking on campus. At first, Richard Spencer's request was denied. However, unfortunately for all of the University of Florida snowflakes, University of Florida happens to be a state university. And you're not allowed to limit free speech on a state university, no matter how much you or I might disagree with it. And you know what? I do disagree with Richard Spencer. What's that old adage? I disagree with what you might say, but I'll defend your right to say it. Anyway, University of Florida did not want to violate the law in that way. So now he was scheduled to speak yesterday. I haven't heard much about it. I'm sort of interested to see how it will go because, of course, in a strange preemptive act, Governor Rick Scott, as though it were some kind of natural disaster, declared a state of emergency. He said, "We live in a country where everyone has the right to voice their opinion. However, we have zero tolerance for violence and public safety is our number one priority. This executive order is an additional step to ensure that the University of Florida and the entire community is prepared so everyone can stay safe. I find that the threat of a potential emergency is imminent," he declared in his executive order. Now, what could the emergency possibly be? A little old white man saying words into a microphone and a bunch of people listening? Is that the state of emergency that we're really talking about? No, the state of emergency is the counter-protest that have become so prevalent across the country whenever someone who even slightly leans to the right goes to speak. We hear this with Ann Coulter. We see this with Ben Shapiro, the exact opposite of a white supremacist. We see this with Milo Yiannopoulos. We see this with almost every single conservative speaker that you can think of. The big black block of snowflake Antifa vagina faces show up and with their masks on and their bottles and their day-old bagels starting to throw stuff at people with their Molotov cocktails. This is the state of emergency that we're talking about. We're not talking about somebody going onto a microphone and saying a few words. The state of emergency is leftism. The state of emergency is that leftists are so against free speech that they are literally willing to burn their own facilities to the ground. And guess what? Governor Rick Scott doesn't want that to happen to the University of Florida. Now, the ironic part is that you're basically giving Richard Spencer the kind of press that he probably loves. I don't buy into the whole white supremacy thing. I don't care. But I really do believe that he has a right to speak his mind. And people have a right to go and listen. People who agree with him and people who disagree with him. Who knows? Maybe everyone who is going there doesn't actually believe what he's saying. Maybe they're going there for the purpose of crafting arguments so that they could completely obliterate him in the market of free ideas. You don't know who is going to make up that audience. Now, this state of emergency basically means that they are pulling from law enforcement from all these other counties, from all the adjacent counties of Alachua County. I mean, honestly, the best thing these leftists can do if they want to fight people like Richard Spencer is to just leave them alone, ignore them, don't give them the validation that they want. Same thing with Ben Shapiro, even though Ben Shapiro and Richard Spencer are polar opposites. Somehow the left likes to lump them in. Antifa likes to lump them in. This is why I can't, when I read articles about this stuff, they say, oh, the white supremacist Richard Spencer, the white supremacist, the neo-Nazi Richard Spencer. And it's from NPR or HuffPo or Washington Post or one of these extreme hardcore leftist rags. It's just hard to take them seriously. If you're going to lump in Ben Shapiro with white nationalism, if you're going to lump in Ann Coulter with neo-Nazism, if you're going to lump in Dinesh D'Souza with hate speech, then all you're doing is dulling. You are cheapening the word. You are cheapening the word hatred. Now, when I hear leftists talking about Richard Spencer, I automatically think to myself, you know what? He's probably not as bad as people are saying. He's probably not calling for anyone to die. He's probably not calling for death or violence or to kill anyone. When you watch BET, Black Entertainment Television on TV, do you think all the people on there are trying to kill white people because they have a black-only club? I personally find the entire idea repugnant. Black-only clubs, white-only clubs, brown-only clubs. I don't think there should be any only clubs based on race. But we don't get upset when black folks want to associate with each other. We don't get upset when the massive swaths of the culture are basically dedicated to only black issues. The Congressional Black Caucus, we don't have a Congressional White Caucus. And that's knee-deep in the government. Black entertainment television. We don't have a white entertainment television. How do you know that this guy, Richard Spencer, isn't just a white counterpart to your beloved Louis Farrakhan and Jeremiah Wright and race baiters like Barack Obama? How do you know? I venture to say that 99% of the people who say that they hate Richard Spencer has never even heard a word of what he said. I'm willing to bet that they couldn't even pick him in a lineup. Now, I run a pretty active Facebook, and I do believe that, large groups of people, there's about 72,000 people that frequent the site, and I do believe that large groups of people are sort of microcosms of larger cultural norms. And I've seen some racism on my site. I've seen some really, really nasty, nasty things being said about people of other races, about Jews. Black people criticizing white people criticizing black people, Christians criticizing Jews, Jews criticizing Muslims, Muslims criticizing America. I've seen it and heard it all. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. There's only one side here that is not trying to govern your thoughts, and that is the conservative side. I believe that everyone is entitled to their thoughts, including the nasty, disgusting, awful, terrible thoughts that, you know what, let's be honest, a lot of us have those. A lot of us have awful thoughts. But there's only one side of the political aisle that is trying to police your thoughts, to police your speech. A state of emergency? A state of emergency in Florida, really? Because a guy is going up on stage and speaking on a microphone? I would be so flattered. I would honestly be so flattered. Ben Shapiro went to speak at Berkeley and it cost them $600,000 just for security. This isn't because Ben Shapiro is bringing violence and radicalism. It's because Antifa, the leftists, are coming out there in droves. And they probably couldn't even pick Ben Shapiro in a lineup. They probably have no idea what the guy even stands for. And I imagine that it is a pretty sweet, sweet feeling. I just can't imagine the kind of validation that all of these political beliefs aside, Ann Coulter, Milo Yiannopoulos, Richard Spencer, putting political beliefs aside, these people are getting validation like they have never, ever seen before. And it probably feels pretty darn sweet to know that Florida declared a state of emergency because you are coming to speak on a microphone to some people at a school. We'll be right back.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Disgruntled Millennial portion of the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. My name is Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, your racism, your microaggressions, your patriarchy, and your white supremacy, because we don't take kindly to intolerance around these parts. Now, I have always been sort of a fan of political comedy. I grew up in a very, very left-wing environment, and they're left-wingers and their folk songs and their singer-songwriter circles where they go around and they talk about, they basically pat themselves on the back and, sort of do the circular kind of thing where they sort of all just get together and brag about how much they hate conservatives. And one of the things that I sort of have evolved into is sort of the exact opposite kind of thing, political comedy, but in the conservative sense, political comedy that takes jabs at people like that who do the circular kind of thing. And I was roaming around the internet trying to find the original video of this black chick who basically says that it's okay to punch a Nazi, and anyone you see who is a Nazi, you can punch him. If you think someone is a Nazi, you can punch him. It's totally okay. This was after Richard Spencer got sucker punched in the face. Basically, he got sucker punched in the face on camera, and all these folks left-wing folks came out saying, "Oh man, yeah, the white supremacist, he got split right in the face, that white supremacist, he got what it was coming to him." And we heard all this stuff from the left, and then of course Bill Maher. Just this whole punch a Nazi phenomenon went all the way up to the top all the way to the top of Hollywood, where, now we're having a debate whether or not we could just go around punching people who we think are Nazis. We're not talking about the concentration camp, Zyklon B pellets, gas chamber Nazis. We're talking about people who have racial preferences. I think racial preferences are pretty stupid, but I guess to each his own. So I was looking for this video of this lady basically saying it's totally okay to punch a Nazi. I came across this really, really amazing song. It's got like 300 views on YouTube. I don't know if this is the original. Who knows? Maybe there's maybe the original guy uploaded it has millions somewhere and everyone has heard it. But I heard this song and it's absolutely brilliant. There's just a couple hundred views. I feel like it's one of those little, like one of the internet's little best kept secrets. I'm going to play it for you right now. It's a little long, but it's hilarious.
Saw on the news today that it's okay to punch a Nazi. So I've been looking for them everywhere I go. I want to do my part to curb the spread of racist violence. Signal my virtues to the others so they'll know that my brothers and my sisters, we are all united against violence. Except for if it's violence against someone we don't like. Vehicular homicide is completely justified as long as it's against someone who's part of the alt-right, right? Hey, there's a Nazi, let's go punch him in the face. Man, that felt great, look at the racist blood all over the place. Whoops, turns out his MAGA hat was really just a plain old red hat. Honest mistake, I thought you were Third Reich, sir. Sorry about that, but Nazis are everywhere. You just gotta believe in them and they'll appear to you right out of thin air. Look, there's a group over there. Bunch of skinhead cancer patients who are dying cause of Obamacare, holding up their signs and protesting. I pull out my Nazi punching fists and then I start to swing at anyone right wing. So go punch a Nazi, you can find them everywhere. Just look for their white skin, their blue eyes, and their light blonde hair. Wait, that's Norwegians. Tell me, what do Nazis look like again? Ah, screw it, just punch anyone who supports Donald Trump. Then there's over 60 million all over the land, not protesting the president and ignoring CNN. And every single one of them are Nazis, this I know. Even the black and Jewish ones, the news just told me so. Hey, there's a Nazi, let's go punch him in the face. Look at him sig-heiling like he wants a master race. So I run up and sucker punch him with everything I have. Whoops, turns out that it was just a girl hailing a cab. Shit, I'm sorry ma'am, I didn't mean to break your jaw. I just saw a Nazi where there wasn't one. This isn't fun, why can't I find them? While the news spews interviews and skews my confused point of view. To not see humanity as one, label everyone and then divide them into groups that we can assault. So go punch a Nazi, you can find one if you try. Look for a swastika or really any straight white guy. You'll feel so great as their blood's gushing down their face. That's what they get for being of a different race. So grab your bats and Antifa flags and pepper spray some old white hag. Don't worry, you're a liberal, so you can't be a fascist. That's the term we relegate to all the white folks that we hate. Oh, and we're not a hate group, only white folks can be racist. So let's round up all the Nazis and put them all in camps to concentrate on what they did wrong, voting for Donald Trump. Let's take all their property, redistribute it to you and me. We'll have a perfect world once we eliminate their scum. So punch all the white people, a Nazi Freudian slip. Exterminate the white race, resist Hail Soros, oh shit. What's happening to me? I'm filled with so much racist hatred.
Okay, comrades, simmer down. We've got a lot to go through today. It's only going to be a couple days until Ann Coulter shows up at Berkeley to spew her fascist fascism, and we are going to give her a good old Antifa welcome. When you walked in, you should have gotten a piece of paper with a recommended list of things that you're going to need while going to our local events. Remember, we are all about free speech, but free speech has its limits. You can't say things that are going to hurt other people's feelings. That's fascism, and that should be against the law. And if the cops are not going to protect us from this awful, terrible speech that hurts our feelings, then we have to defend ourselves. So make sure you bring your glass bottles, knives, brass knuckles, and anything that you could possibly use as a projectile to throw at these awful, terrible, disgusting, nasty people. We stand against hate in all of its forms. Remember, anytime you're going to fight fascism, you need your strength. You need your energy. So always remember, stock up on chips, lollipops. But remember, no crackers and no milk. Nothing that represents white supremacy or toxic male whiteness. Also, whenever you're fighting capitalism, you need that extra push. You need to bring your energy drinks, Rockstar, Monster, but no Red Bull. No Red Bull at all. We do not want to be insensitive to our Native American comrades. And the worst thing you can do to a Native American is to drink Red Bull, because that's cultural appropriation. What we do is we fight capitalism and white supremacy by going to the grocery store, and instead of choosing to buy Red Bull, we choose to buy Monster and we choose to buy Rockstar. That is how an Antifa fights capitalism and white supremacy. Of course, you can't forget your bear mace. Bear mace is absolutely recommended just in case you see any Trump supporters or any free speech advocates talking to the press. If you see someone talking to a camera, reach out from the crowd and mace the bitch. And remember, this is very, very important. Only target white people during the protest. We don't want to target any people of color. And if a fascist retaliates or even gets close to you, remember, drop to the floor, yell rape, cry, or anything that will look good on camera. You could become a celebrity. And if for any reason you run out of weapons, look for rocks, bricks, or street signs to kick down. You have to remember this. These fascists don't even believe in man-made global warming. So what you need to do is you need to kick down a garbage can, take out the empty bottles, take out some bagels, take out some wads of paper, and throw it at them, okay? They need to understand that environmentalism is an important thing, and if we need to litter in order to show them that, then so be it. Climate change deniers might as well be rapists and murderers, so we need to show these people what Antifa does with rapists and murderers. You know what we do? We fuck them in the ass without their permission, and then we kill them. It's the Antifa way. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to one of our biggest supporters, Berkeley's mayor, Jesse Arulwin. Okay, man. Thank you so much, Antifa Berkeley, for participating in this fine event. We are going to make sure that Berkeley is always a sanctuary city and make sure that we are all friendly towards the Antifa movement. I want to offer a reward to anyone who gets a shot at Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes is the founder of the Proud Boys, and they are our biggest threat to Antifa movement. These fascist Proud Boys are causing lots of problems for us here in Berkeley. Okay, we cannot tolerate that. And nothing would make me happier than to see that Gavin McInnes be punched in his stupid face. Okay, man? It's time to go kill some Nazis.
Of course, leftist hypocrisy never ceases to disgust me, and I'm sure it never ceases to disgust you. Again, this is Brett Segal, live from Jacksonville. We'll be back in a minute.
Kevin Jackson on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177. Or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.
putting an end to identity politics. This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.
Greetings and salutations. You are tuning in to the Kevin Jackson Radio Show. Of course, I am Brett Segal, the Disgruntled Millennial, broadcasting to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. We just heard a song called Punch a Nazi. It's an original comedy song. And the song basically outlines some of the hypocrisies among the Antifa and the leftists, the feminists, the slut walk people, the Dyke March people, all the Women's March people, all these people who claim to care so much about racial equality and seem to want to rid the world of racism and negative feelings between the races. They really, really actually do the exact opposite. What they do is they stoke the flames. Exactly how is it that claiming that all white people are racist and that all white people are privileged somehow, how does that help race relations? Starting any sentence with all Muslims, all black people, all Latinos, all women. These are the kinds of sentences that these people, by their own rationale, that is what they claim is racism and hate speech. But what you are bound to see is basically what happens all the time, is that the left eats its own tail. Now, if you are a woman, if you are a feminist woman, a white feminist woman, it's not simply okay that you kneel before the altar of redistributionism and income inequality and police brutality and all the stuff that leftists claim to want to stop, but actually end up causing more damage and more harm in the end. It's not just good enough that these white women support these causes. They have to actually kneel before the altar of intersectionality. Otherwise, their feminism isn't worthwhile. They are not accepted. And you know what? I kind of feel bad. I kind of feel bad for these ladies. These white ladies who are being chastised by these black feminists. These feminists who say that even though they all support the same exact thing, unless they do more to immolate themselves, to immolate their whiteness, to immolate their race, I don't think race should be upheld. I don't think it should be immolated. It's one of those things that's just a fact of reality. You're just born that way. You can't help it. Criticizing yourself because of your race, forcing others to criticize themselves because of their race, that's not going to make race relations any better. And this is the crux of it, because they do not want to make race relations any better. They've already decided in their mind that white people are the devil, that white people are the enemy. So you can scratch and claw your way into these feminist circles, white women, white men. The farther to the left they go, the less you are going to be accepted. It's like being a Jew in one of these circles. You have to literally disown the state of Israel. You have to disavow Israel. Every day that goes by, leftists seem more and more like cult members to me. Disavow this, protest that. The big black bloc of Antifa, they've got their pecking orders too, their hierarchies of victimhood. If you're a white woman, you're scum. You can't be a feminist. You have to disavow your whiteness. What are you talking about? I wasn't even really thinking about my whiteness. I'm thinking about income inequality. Of course you're not thinking about your whiteness because you have white privilege. Of course you don't think about that. You go to the bottom. And I guess the blacker you are and the more gay you are, the more trans you are, the more Muslim you are, the higher your victim status is. So you get a higher place in the cult. People talk to you differently. They refer to you differently. See, they can call you white people, but you have to call them person of color. You see the difference? What's amazing to me is how overt the racism is. On the left, racism towards white people is so mainstream now. It's just like, okay. It's totally okay. No one really thinks twice about it. You know how many times I've been called a cracker? A honky? White boy? So many times. I'm not complaining. Some people are just jerks. And that makes a meritocracy so much more important when you're choosing who to surround yourself with. These feminists, it's not a meritocracy. It's all based on the color of your skin and your station in life. It's all based on how much privilege you have and how much guilt you need to assume. Name one extremely insulting pejorative that goes only to white people that's universally condemned, like the N-word. Universally condemned. Name one. If you can think of one word that refers to white people that is universally condemned, or one phrase that is universally condemned, tweet me at Shaq General, because I want to know. Because as far as I can see, when it's white people, it's fair game. And these intersectional feminists, they don't even know when they have a good thing. They've got droves and droves of these white women lining up, clawing their way into these feminist organizations. And the first thing these intersectional feminists do is say, you have to disavow your whiteness. You have to disavow the patriarchy, all this stuff, all this stuff that now these white feminists are starting to think, well, hey, well, like, what are you talking about? Some of them buy into it, and I'm sure some of them become conservatives because these white feminists show up and they're there to help. And when you look a gift horse in the mouth, you make people start to think, why did I do this? Why did I join this feminist club? All I hear all day long is how terrible I am. I'm talking to you, white feminists, who may have found yourselves feeling a little bit guilty about your melanin content.
You might have heard the term white feminism used lately after Nicki Minaj and Taylor Swift's Twitter exchange, or when people critique HBO's Girls.
Actually, I don't care about either of those things. I don't care about some stupid petty feud between some celebrities, nor do I care about the extreme leftist hack, Lena Dunham, who really, really just sucks as a human being.
But what does it mean?
Basically, white feminism is feminism that ignores intersectionality.
So not all feminists who are white feminists.
But most white feminists are white.
You see how they just rope in a vast majority of minorities? As if there wouldn't be some black or Hispanic or Arab woman out there who just wants to focus on women's issues. They have to rope in the whole race thing.
Because white people just don't have to think about things like race on a daily basis.
See how her thought process is? Her thought process is that certain races think about certain things. That's racist.
We're not just pulling the race card. White feminism excludes the experiences of basically anyone who's not white, cis, and straight.
Here's why that's so problematic.
First, it assumes the way white women experience misogyny is the way all women experience misogyny. And that's just not true.
No, creepy rapers and sexual harassers are just super racist, They go around and say, oh, well, this black chick, I think I got to harass her even more because she's black. Oh, this white chick, I'll give her a pass because she's white. Or I'll just harass her a little bit, or I'll just grab one boob instead of two. What are you even talking about?
White feminism aims to close the wage gap between men and women. But what it fails to recognize is that most of the time, Latina and black women make even less than white women.
Yes, there are swaths of feminists out there who are out there protesting Occupy Wall Street and all that good stuff. They're out there thinking to themselves, oh, I only care about white inequalities. I only care about... No, this is just a natural result of what intersectionality is. Intersectionality, the crux of intersectionality is to divide people on these lines. If you don't do that, then you're not intersectional, so of course. The irony is that these feminists, these white feminists, are all in their camp. Who are they even talking to?
And police brutality should be viewed as a feminist issue, but it doesn't affect white women the way it affects women of color. If Sandra Bland had been a white woman, would a simple traffic stop have resulted in an arrest? Would she be viewed as a loud, angry black woman? Would she be dead?
White feminism ignores the role that whiteness plays in creating things like beauty standards.
White women are most often the faces of feminism. Tina Fey, Taylor Swift, Amy Schumer have been able to break into industries that have been dominated by cis white men. But black women, women of color, we face barriers that white women don't.
Critiquing white feminism isn't about silencing those women. It's about opening up space for even more diverse voices to be heard. And that's great for everyone.
Being a white feminist doesn't make you a bad person. It just means you have a lot to learn.
The most important thing any white feminist can do is educate herself and listen and engage with the experiences of women of color without silencing them. Because sometimes as white ladies, we just have to shut the up.
Okay, well, doesn't this color the protest of Richard Spencer a little bit differently? Doesn't it color that whole protest a little bit brighter? They want Richard Spencer to shut up because he's a white supremacist. But in the same breath, they want their own people, their own white people, to shut up. It kind of makes it seem like these intersectional feminists, these leftists, don't want white people anywhere to have any sort of voice. As if we all sit around here thinking about race all the time. Get me at Shaq General. We'll see you next week.
He won't stop until he's the top-rated radio talk show host in America.
What kind of weird competitive freak are you?
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.